Thank you. Brilliant. So, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Active Travel Cafe. I'm delighted tonight to welcome Jessica and Tony from Leicestershire County Council. And they are here this evening to talk to us about school streets and their experiences in Leicestershire delivering school streets, and also connecting that with the other people in the community, those advocates, and how local advocacy can make a difference. Now, before we go on to our presenters, shall we do a round of news? Who's got some news for us this evening? Bob, you're up.
Yeah, it's something from it's tweeted by All Party Parliamentary Cycling Group and Walking and Cycling Group. I'll put it in the chat. It's a Public Accounts Committee report, and I can't really. I've only read through it briefly once. I can't make much sense of it. I'll stick the link up in the chat, but it could be quite important for active travel.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Always a source of great news. Adam, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, Bob, on that report, what I could read of it is the whatever committee said one thing and the government went, no, we don't agree. But yeah, there is, yeah, you're right. It needs a lot more detailed reading. Just on what's happening in Bath and North East Somerset, they had 3 ongoing what they call livable neighbourhood trials, which we call LTNs and everybody else calls low traffic neighbourhoods. The reports have come out basically in favour of them. 2 of the areas had very high support from residents, and in general, there was one area called Southlands which had, I think, 57% of residents against it. But the reasons they placed for being against it weren't. If you actually looked at the traffic data, came out, the objections were invalid effectively. You know, the claims they were making weren't true. So they basically think of going ahead with it, despite the headline figure of it being opposed by residents, and because the data doesn't back up what the opposition reasons are for. So it's an interesting sort of. I haven't seen that before, but that's it's a good. I suppose it's a good thing. And yeah, that's it.
Okay, thanks, Adam. Also with a question is A. Kelly.
Hello there. Hi. It's Andy Kelly. I'm in Wiltshire. Got a couple of items, a pretty slightly larger story and a smaller one, which is relevant to today. So first one is Bradford-on-Avon Town Council have just completed a traffic modelling exercise, which is run, an activity and simulation, I think it was, run by Atkins on behalf of Wiltshire Council. The initial results of that are on their website. I'll post a link shortly in the chat. Summary, though, it's a bit of a mixed bag, I think, for active travel. So it looks like we're getting some extra space, a couple of roads for cycle paths and maybe some wider pavements. But the real pinch point in the town seems not to be getting anything. And they're relying on EVs to reduce, because the air quality actually gets worse under this model, the preferred model, and they're relying on EVs to help the air quality, which I don't think is a great outcome, but I'll let other people judge that one. Interested to know if anyone's had a chance to read it, what their thoughts are, because yeah, I'm a little bit concerned by it. And then slightly smaller bit of news, my wife's actually a governor in the neighbouring county of Bath and North East Somerset, which is where Adam is. She's just achieved a very small milestone on the route to a school street. So she has a temporary TRO approved as of, I think, a couple of days ago for a playing out event at Freshford Primary School. She is really pleased about that. She's actually at work at the moment. I'm hoping she might join when she gets back in time for the end of the school streets session later on.
Okay, thanks, Andy. Anyone else with some news today? Well, you're all a bit surprisingly quiet. There's normally more than this. Wow. Okay. Oh, I can see a hand waving. Sarah, are you waving? Let's go.
Yeah, I just want to say that in Farnborough and Aldershot, we've had some big bike revival money, and we're doing Learn to Fix, and we're having a lead ride. And the Learn to Fix at Sylvester's Bike Shop has proved really, really, really popular and is oversubscribed, and it's a combination of adults with children as well. So it's going really well, and we're oversubscribed for the next session. And so I'm just happy about that.
Yeah.
And hopefully we're getting some money from Cycling UK and also our local authority to do some ride leadership training as well.
That's brilliant, Sarah. For those who might not know, could you give us a bit of a summary about what the Big Bike Revival is?
Oh, that's the Big Bike Revival has been going for a couple of 2 or 3 years now, and it's a behaviour change program. And Learn to Fix, it used to be called Fix, Learn and Ride. So we obtained funding to have bikes fix and also teach basic riding skills and take people on a bike ride. The Learn to Fix is a new thing, and we just happen to have a really family-centred bike shop in Farnborough run by a guy called Henry Sylvester. And Learn to Fix session was very good. If you go to the Cycling UK website, you can find more about the Big Bike Revival and the sort of behaviour and psychology and the way of doing it. I'm having to explain that very well. But Charlie's here as well, and he's gone on some of these sessions, and I think he would give them the thumbs up, wouldn't you, Charlie? He's hiding at the moment.
Brilliant. Well, maybe we can bring a bit more about Big Bike Revival and maybe help other groups here to put in applications as well.
They are. We've put the Learn to Ride in, not the Learn to Ride, the Ride Leadership. I want to do some ride leadership because I think our voluntary riding group, Ride Rushmore, needs a bit of help to maintain its inclusivity, and so we want some proper professional ride leadership training with a focus on inclusion, because as soon as people get keen, they start sort of wanting the gear and getting faster and longer rides, and so it's hard to sort of hook it back to its beginnings
Victims of
again.
your own success.
Yes, exactly.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you, Sarah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Ruth, your news.
Well, as usual, it's not really news. It's just a bit of a whinge. I've just done a 20-mile bike ride to do a recce for a funeral I'm going to on Thursday to see if I can do it. And Richmond, I think, gets #1 for the poorest road surfaces ever, anywhere. And I think people don't realise just how much that impacts on cycling. You know, it takes up so much room on the road, and we have to cycle much further out, and drivers don't get it. And I've decided that I'm not going to risk my life on Thursday, and it's a real shame because it'll take me forever to get to this funeral, and it's why people drive. So I'm sorry to whinge, better word, but you know, it's not great. Thanks.
Yeah, take care of yourself on your way, whatever way you go. David, your news.
Yeah, I just want to draw your attention to something I put in the chat, which is Better Drivers for Better Streets sticker. Once you've cleaned the back of your car, you can stick it next to the number plate, and it's basically a pledge. It's virtue signaling a pledge to drive safely or properly. But Better Streets for Birmingham are always coming up with new ideas, and they've somehow funded this. It's quite a nice sticker. It's a bit grotty in the picture. So we'll see how it goes, but it'll be hopefully reassuring if a car passes you and gives you plenty of 1.5 meters. You'll have a better driver sticker on the back. I mean, reckless driving, as you know, is a major problem, particularly in Birmingham. And the other news from last week is more casualties. So I just want to draw your attention to that. On Big Bike Revival, this is Cycling UK's flagship behaviour change scheme. It's right across the country. It's a similar one in Scotland. Be quite good to get someone from there to do an evaluation of it. I think it starts from the premise that there's bikes, endless bikes in garages and sheds that could be brought out, millions of them, and it does work on fixing your bike, behaviour change, and leads to the setting up of community cycling clubs, which has certainly made a big difference in Birmingham. Be quite good to get an evaluation from Cycling UK on what they've achieved, because they've had it for well, since I was on the board. So it's probably a 10-year-old program now, and it's kept going. DFT funded in the main, but obviously in partnership with local authorities. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Ben, you're up.
Yeah, some news I heard this morning. I'm trying to get to the bottom of it because it just sounds so good. From what I understand, neighbouring council to me, Central Bedfordshire, are planning on removing all of the barriers from their land on cycleways which are not up to LTN 120 standard. And this is obviously going to be quite an extensive programme. So, really looking forward to getting to the bottom of it and confirmation and all the rest of it. Because it's extensive, I'm imagining that they won't be able to do it all in 1 year. And that also will make it a particularly useful location for a research study that I'm aware of, and we're looking for locations for, where councils are committed to removing barriers, but are willing to allow a 1 year study before removal and then a 1 year study after removal, so there can be some really good comparative data of the social impacts of removal, across the entire cycle of seasons. And so if people know of other locations where there are going to be barrier removals, which might be possible to have such a study around, be very interested to learn about those, so we can pass details on to those that are organising the research.
Thank you, Ben. Okay, we're getting quite tight on our question time now. So all remaining questioners who have not asked a question already, news. All people who haven't given news yet, quick news bites, please. H, you're up.
Notes down quickly. I've had an interesting debate on bus stops with the debate in London, and we were going back to the experimental cycle route in Bedford, where they had a bike route through the bus stop, and all sorts of interesting things were drawn out in 1987. So we've learnt nothing, and that's the thing. We're having also a debate on car park spaces. My record is £83,000 per space at Penrith Station, but it's generally about £20,000 to £25,000 per space for multi-storey. That has to come out of budgets. What is the true cost of parking? Because I'm aware that one company is saving £2,000 a week by not renting it.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, H. Toby, quick news bites.
Quick news bite, giving you a heads up on embargo news still to come out. The London Cycling Campaign's Women's Network last year surveyed over 1,000 women on cycling in London. Their report is being launched this evening at an event and on social media tomorrow. So look out for that.
Okay, I thought you were about to tell us the embargoed news.
I hate to say I can't.
Just to look out for it. That's fine. Thank you, Toby. And hopefully we'll have a report on it at Active Travel Cafe. If that's not in the works, we should make sure that we do put it in the diary.
We can certainly pass that on.
Yeah, Mark, quick news bite.
If anyone hasn't already said this, so Brighton Council last week, about the same time we were meeting last week, gave approval to phase 3 of the Valley Gardens scheme, which is the scheme in the centre of Brighton. So this is a scheme that's been coming and going and coming and going. It'll link what's there down to the Palace Pier, and we get rid of the Palace Pier roundabout with a 2-way Cyclops, which I'd be interested in people's views of if you have a look at it. So instead of it going round the Cyclops the one way, all the tracks across will be 2-way. And also just on Ben, quickly on Ben, we've been doing this piece of work for York on barrier removal, which I think certainly Isabel has been part of. And we're setting up a stakeholder panel of disabled people and cyclists and so on to look at barriers and barrier policy. So it'd be good to chat to Ben about that at some point.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, and thanks everybody for your news. And I think we probably turned recording on a step too early. Something's missing on our little itinerary here. So I'm just going to do the introduction again, so it makes it easy when we do the editing of the YouTube videos. So bear with me. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Active Travel Cafe. I'm delighted that Tony and Jessica are joining us this evening from Leicestershire County Council to talk about their School Streets project and the role that local advocates can take in supporting them. And I will now hand over the screen and the sound to Jessica and Tony, and hopefully you can give us a bit of an introduction about yourselves as well. Over to you.
Hello. So it's me first. Just want to check that everyone can see my screen before I start talking. Brilliant. So I'm Jessica Herbert. I'm the Safe and Sustainable Travel Manager at Leicestershire County Council. So managing behaviour change projects within the authority for walking, cycling, car share, public transport. Everything active travel really falls under myself and Tony and the team. So I'm just going to run through a few slides around our School Streets project, that started back in 2022. I was explaining when I was asked to join that there is quite a lot of information around the School Streets project, so forgive me because I've tried to squeeze a lot into a short space. So I am absolutely comfortable if people want to ask questions or get in touch with me. I'll leave my email address for people to contact me if they've got any further questions, if you feel I haven't covered anything that you want to ask. So as I said, in 2022, I was lucky enough to be asked to run a project in partnership with our traffic and signals team. They're the side of the department that would handle sort of the legal side of the road closures. So like I say, we're behaviour change, then we linked up with the road closure side as well. So it was a small pot of funding that was available, and we invited all the schools in Leicestershire to apply with an expression of interest as to why they would want to take part in the School Street scheme. And what we had to do is score them against a criteria, which included things such as road classification, location of the school, bus routes, whether there was available park and stride locations, and what commitment the school may have had already to the active and sustainable travel agenda in partnership with Leicestershire County Council. So once this process had been conducted, we selected 3 schools to trial the School Streets programme at. And you're probably looking at my slide now thinking I've only listed 2 schools, which would be absolutely right. And I can explain that originally we were looking at trialling different road setups. So for example, the 2 schools that I've listed here, Latimer Street in Anstey and Scotland Road in Colville, they're both on cul-de-sacs, whereas a 3rd school that was located in Thurnby was a through route. So it was a main road through a village. We had to put diversions in place. We had to manage a lot more through traffic and a lot more movement for residents coming out of different sides of the village. So once we kind of had that in place, it wasn't deemed feasible for us to run. The setup that Leicestershire chose to run School Streets, it didn't really work, and from a safety perspective and a road network perspective, we didn't carry that forward. So I'm just kind of focusing on the 2 schools that we did take forward. But as I said, I'm more than happy to take any questions at a later time around sort of like the through route scenario that we had with Thurnby. So what we did is, like I say, we set up an experimental regulation order. So it was a temporary order that we put in place to allow us to run the School Streets. And as part of this, what we originally wanted to do was potentially set up a community-led scheme. But again, with the budget and the timescale we had, it wasn't feasible. So Leicestershire County Council actually resourced this programme. So our officers were out manning the closures, speaking to the community and running the scheme between September 2022 and October 2022. And as part of this process, what we did, we had a consultation that was live throughout the School Streets trial. We also conducted surveys. We also did interviews, and we also had traffic management surveys as well. And what that what that did, it did to kind of show that the School Streets programme was positive. It had a positive effect. I think overall the themes that were coming through from parents and carers was that they felt it was safer for their children to be able to walk, cycle, scoot, wheel to school. But we did have some responses from the community through the consultation process where they supported it, but they felt that there was potentially some tweaks that could have been made. And this included sort of shortening the closure time, changing of equipment and signs. But for me, one of the big things was making the scheme sustainable and reliable moving forward. And again, that for me, that kind of meant, using the authority's resource, it just wasn't feasible. We needed to kind of have a way that we could work with the schools and community for them to manage the scheme. So I'll go into that in a bit more detail. So just to give a bit of an overview of what our scheme looked like with all my ramblings, because I know I'm probably going in a bit of an odd order, but so our setup for School Streets, like I said, was an experimental traffic regulation order. We used signs and barriers, so there's not any there's no camera enforcement for this. It would have been enforceable by the police under like a traffic offence. So you can see from the picture here, we had the two signs and the barrier, which have now been exchanged for cones under health and safety revision with the risk assessment. So the closure took place in the morning drop-offs and the school pickup times in the afternoon. And it was we had restrictions for everyone apart from blue badge holders. We also allowed residents to move in and out of the closure point if necessary. They would be given a permit, also emergency vehicles and deliveries. So although we say it's a school street and it's a no vehicle zone, there were vehicles moving in and out. However, this was very limited. And I would say there was no more than sort of 10 to 15 vehicles moving out during the period of the closure. So it still felt like a traffic-free zone, and people still felt safe whilst like walking or scooting or riding their bike. As I said, we wanted to provide practical solutions. So I think it was quite reasonable to understand not every parent or carer would be able to walk to school. There are people that do need to use their vehicles. So we ensured that we had park and stride facilities available, 2 for each location. So, and they needed to be within a 5-minute walk from the school. So we worked with the landowners. So we had a mixture of local district car parks, retail, so shops, local shops, who were more than happy for parents and carers to use their car parking spaces during those drop-off and pick-up times. And they were advertised and they were also signposted around local communities so people knew where they were and that they were available. So as I said, we did ensure there was access for local residents, employees. So the two sites, although they're on cul-de-sacs, they were mixed use. So we had not only the school, but we had a couple of businesses and we also had residents. So we needed to ensure that we were catering for them. So a big part of sort of the School Streets programme was communication and engagement with the community. So we wanted to work with the schools to ensure that we were making sure everyone was aware what was happening, when they could or couldn't access the zone, what they would be entitled to. We made sure we supported the schools and the community with the Choose How You Move website, which is our Leicestershire County Council and Leicester City's active and sustainable travel website, as well as using our social media channels. We did do community engagement and we supported the school with that. So they were hosted at the school or nearby village halls where we invited the school to host it, but we went and supported. We placed flyers in the local community, as well as advertising, like I said, the local park and strides, and making sure that we're communicating with parents and carers through newsletters and making sure that the school were in charge of that. So as I said, like one of the big parts for me was making sure that this was sustainable moving forward. So when we when we took all of the considerations of the consultation from the September to October trial, we did implement a second trial from June 2023, which meant that we worked in partnership with the schools to take ownership. So they ran the school. There was no LCC officers, so no Leicestershire County Council officers out on site. We equipped the school with PPE equipment, signs and barriers, health and safety instruction videos, training, and risk assessments. And actually, the school were more than happy to take it on. I think the positive thing about is taking the risk of LCC officers delivering the first trial meant that the school then didn't want to go without it. So the fact that they stepped up to the plate, they felt confident in the scheme. We ironed out those tweaks. We gave them the necessary things to kind of move it forward. The Latimer location has actually now paid a person to be there Monday to Friday, morning and afternoon, to run the closures. And the Beaverdale School in Colville have their staff manning the closure every day. So again, like we've got that clear commitment, and we also have got a memorandum of understanding with the schools that, you know, it is their responsibility to run that. But we provide the equipment and the traffic ordering that will allow them to do that. So just in a bit of a nutshell, I'm going to say it was positive. It was a positive outcome. 93% of the parents that were surveyed said it was positive. I think you can see from the comments there, a lot of the concerns people had were around safety, and they felt that, like I said, that their children were able to kind of travel to school by bike, scooting, walking. The families and children, you know, the school said they noticed a difference in the family and children arriving in the mornings. It also reduced the amount of lateness, you know, every day. And also with putting the changes in place in the second consultation, we actually had no objections to the scheme. So we feel like we found a balance between the community and the businesses, the residents and the businesses and the school, so still to be able to encourage that mode shift away from the single car, or, you know, the car congestion at the school gate. So we are looking to make this a permanent scheme in Leicestershire for those two schools. And obviously, if we did have any funding, additional funding available, then we would be looking to implement this in other locations across the county. So, like I say, sorry, it was a bit of a whistle-stop tour around Leicestershire school streets, but I will hand over to Tony now. But like I say, I'm happy to take any questions after, and thanks ever so much for listening.
Bear with me while I just share the screen, sorry.
Thanks, Jessica.
I need to stop
Jessica,
sharing, Tony.
Yeah.
Oh.
Brilliant. Thanks, Jessica. And over to you, Tony.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can. Perfect.
Evening all. What a gloriously intimidating bunch of experts on this call. I'm Tony. I also work in the Choose How You Move team with Jess at Leicestershire, and I was just going to give just 5 minutes on the power of advocacy, as we call it. So we just a bit of background. We're the behaviour change team at the County Council. The way Leicestershire is set up is there's the County Council and the 7 district councils as well. We work under the Choose How You Move banner. That's a joint operation with the City Council, just to add confusion. But we at the county are the behaviour change part of the whole active travel and highways and transport department. We noticed a couple of years ago some increased activity around our social media posts from a particular account. These comments were some really kind of well-informed comments, asking us some very polite but quite challenging, difficult questions about funding and programs and schemes, what we were doing, why we were doing certain things and where we were doing it. Someone obviously had a bit of knowledge and understanding of active travel as a concept and a principle, but also a kind of a desire to understand how local authorities work, because I think we'll be the first to admit that we can be a bit illogical and a bit kind of labyrinthine in the way that we work and some of the working practices and the way we're set up. So we started to see this challenge coming our way, and in these posts there's a kind of willingness to kind of tag in and include and engage with senior political figures, our lead members, MPs, and also to flag up schemes and ideas and good practice from around the country. So this person obviously had a bit of a network behind them. We made contact with Rachel, who's on the call, at some point, and began a bit of a dialogue. And really the message I'm kind of getting across is, for a local authority, there is a real benefit in having what we would call a critical friend or an informed outsider, which is said in the nicest possible way, someone who can cast a bit of an impartial eye over what we're doing as the authority, because I think we're all guilty of sometimes just looking inwards, and to have someone who can make a point and make representations and be very, very busy, undoubtedly busy out there, is a real bonus. What she can do is to spot where we're duplicating efforts, which sometimes happens where we overlap with work, spotting areas where people don't necessarily communicate with each other within the local authority, breaking down some of those barriers and helping us to kind of self-reflect on the way we work. And although we did consultations in the normal way that you would do for schemes and LC whip schemes and all the rest of it, we didn't really have this kind of advocacy before kind of Rachel came along. She highlighted the kind of some of the things that we've got an engineering side to the department, as well as the behaviour change side of the department. Same, different sides of the same coin, but often we didn't communicate as well as we could have done. And her kind of questions and presence has made that improved. It led to a meeting with our kind of lead member. Rachel came in person. One of the criticisms that Active Travel England levelled at us, actually, as an authority, was the lack of political engagement at a senior level. The schemes were okay, but there was no kind of figurehead at a senior political level as there is in other parts of the country. We are trying to address that, and that whole process was started by this meeting that we had in person with Rachel. She came into County Hall and listened to us and met the lead member, and helped, I think, to increase the political buy-in for what we're doing. On these slides, I've just done 3 or 4 slides of just some example tweets that Rachel's posted, and she goes under the name of Leicestershire Loves Cycling. You can see this tweet here talks about mentioning stuff that she's seen on local Facebook groups, so obviously telling us that she's active in those Facebook groups. Question, a direct question, and then tagging in Alberto Costa, the local MP. So straight away, straight into that level of intervention. This next one, quite a long thread here, but this starts off with a summary of active travel route from Market Harbour's new 900-home airfield farm development. That's a big development in the south of the county. She's obviously read the plans for that, so she's well informed, talks about the towpath surface. She's been down there and walked it, gives some positive comments and some feedback, and then quite rightly as well makes some constructive criticism about the quality of some of the surface there. So, well informed, well researched, and a well argued point there, in a way that we just can't ignore, even if we wanted to ignore it. When you subject to that kind of feedback, it is very difficult to ignore. Here's another one. Sounds exactly like the Mill Lane issues in Enderby. That's the school with particular problems. Parents at the school think cars should be restricted at school start and stop times. Well, how do you know that, Rachel? Because you've obviously done some work down there and you've got yourself involved with the school, so you're reporting that. And then some tactical tagging, as we call it, of the local district council and others, road safety, Leicestershire, that kind of stuff. So again, kind of spreading the word far and wide, really. And lastly, down at Market Harbour, again in the south of the county, flagging up to our followers a survey about cycle parking and giving some tips and suggestions about what the answers should be, really. So all of this led to us setting up a cycling, walking and wheeling forum, which was quite a new departure for us. An in-person and online simultaneous forum. We had about 50 people come into County Hall and join us online as well. And we had a representative from Active Travel England, and the head of our policy and strategy team gave an input. And the aim of the inaugural forum was to kind of, it wasn't a charm offensive, far from it, but it was an opportunity for us to actually get out to some interested people what we're doing, why we're doing it, to kind of reassure people that we get it, that we're strapped for cash, as everybody is. But, you know, although we're short on cash, we're not short on ideas or ambition. And it was an opportunity for us to get that across and then begin the process of a two-way exchange of information and try and include more people in our decision making and our kind of plans in a way that we hadn't done before. So I think when I was just thinking about what to say here, I jotted down some kind of qualities of a successful advocate, if you like. And I've written down knowledge, pragmatism, because we can be hard to deal with as an authority sometimes, diplomacy and tactfulness, persistence and tenacity. And I think what I would just leave you with is to reassure anybody who is campaigning, and I know there are some campaigners on this call, keep going, because it does get through to the right people in local authorities, decision makers, and people higher up the political chain. So keep going; it is valued, and we do take notice of it. So that's really what I wanted to leave you with. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tony. Thank you, Jessica. And dare I say it, thank you, Rachel, who is sitting here with a bright red face. And as an advocate myself, Rachel, I might need to go and take some notes. Right, shall we open the floor for questions? As we always do, we've got in the chat using question at the start or pop up your hand. Sarah, you've popped up a hand. Why don't you ask your question first?
Yes, I live in, my local authority is Hampshire, and my district council is Rushmore Borough Council, and we have got lots of potential in Rushmore for school streets. And based on a message sent to me by Cycling UK, I promoted a link to some school streets training, and I sent the message to any perceivable contact, local councillors, local council officers, county councillors, county council officers. And I think there's a problem in that one of my, I know actually I emailed you about this when I heard that school streets was on. I've sent an email to Active Travel Cafe. This is a message from one of my campaigners who says, well, this is a county issue. This is not he's from Hart, which is another district council. He said, well, this is to do with the county council. It's not a district council issue. But the problem is it's the ward councillor that has the ward with the street that we want to turn into a school street. And if the whole concept is imposed, probably wrong word, is imposed by the local authority, and all of a sudden surprise the ward councillors and the school, and then you get a lot of people that just want to herald the school run, and it just doesn't seem to work. And I noticed the schools there's a positive outcome coming, the schools that are cul-de-sac. Well, that is quite, and that's quite easy to do. Well, it obviously isn't easy to do, but it's easier to do than a school street that's actually a rat run. And if it was low traffic neighbourhood, it wouldn't be a rat run. And I think there's such a distance between the local authority and the borough council that when then the scheme's imposed on an
Sarah,
area.
can we wrap that one up into a question? So it's about
Yes,
different
how do
levels
I,
of the
yes, sorry.
council.
How
Yeah.
do I deal with this mess? How do I engage? How do I just make it not a local authority issue and bring it to the community?
Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah. So it is a difficult one. I think, again, I think quite honest in terms of, it does appear that nothing is straightforward, but we were very lucky in the terms of the concept of school streets. Obviously, before we go ahead and we say we're going to do it, we do engage with our local district councillors, our members. You know, they have to be on board with the concept before we can implement it. You know, so for us as a local authority and a department, we make sure that, you know, we're working with the districts and that we have support for that. Sorry, because I know you'd said quite a lot there, and I had a few in my head as you were talking. I had some answers to the questions. So, and again, it does flip because we're the highway authority. So people do tend to put the onus on us that we are the ones that have the authority to do the traffic regulation orders. So I think when people are saying this is a highway issue or a county council issue, I imagine they mean that the districts don't have the power to implement the school streets. So that might be a barrier that in your local area that you're facing. Whereas, and then just thinking about what you said as well, and in terms of the through routes, you're right. I think really honest about cul-de-sacs, they are easier to manage, and that we do need to find it. School streets isn't going to be a solution for every site or school, and there will be barriers that I don't think, like I say, this solution is one that will tick every school off and will be possible. So again, it might seem like a quick win, but it does work. You know, we do have positive outcomes from it, and we have seen an increase in active travel with the pupils and the parents that we've worked with at those two schools. But yes, we need to find another solution for those through routes. You know, in Leicestershire, that you might you called like a rat run. I understand that, and I'd be quite honest about that. It's not a perfect solution that would fit all road types and school locations. But I'm happy again. I'm always happy to have a chat. And obviously, I know Rachel's done some work with us, so again, I can have a chat with Rachel and maybe a group together if Rachel was up for it about some more of the background work we did with local members or district councils.
Yeah, I guess from a campaigning perspective, you need to understand who your key stakeholders are. Who are your key movers and shakers? So there's a school in a village near here where I know they're up for looking at a school street. So we've already got the school thinking, right, yeah, and the parents even saying, yeah, we want this. So you're picking off a certain school. And then my next piece of sort of thinking, if you like, is right, who are the councillors in that village? Because they need to be engaged. And then you kind of, you target those people. And I happen to know one or two of them, so that helps. And then you're sort of thinking, right, you've got to connect the district council, because that's the district council level, with the county council. Because in my head, I see the county council. I mean, it's tricky where we are because we've got two levels of authority. But the county council is almost like the deliverer. So, if the district council is saying we need this school street and then banging on their door, the county council, it's much harder for the county council to ignore them. So it's sort of a combination of all your different stakeholders. It's your school saying we want this. It's the district council level saying we want this, or town council, whatever it is, however it works with you. And then it's the county council saying, yeah, we've got the funding, we can come along and do this. So it's really understanding who the key players are and, within your political setup.
My setup's very similar to yours, I think, Rachel. I just don't think we've got the engagement within the ward quite yet.
And that's what I'd work on is go to that school, go work out who the councillors are, even the officers, because I work with the officers at a district level.
I know that stuff. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, but that's the only way it's worked for me, is really getting in there.
All right, shall we get a couple of our other questions through and then see if we can get more into this at the end? So I'm just going to batch the two questions together here. Can we have a bit more detail about the school street scheme on a through route that wasn't taken forward? Was it on a classified road, for example? And the other question, did some of the landowners who offered their space for Park and Stride want anything in return? So for Jessica and Tony.
So yeah, so Park and Stride is an easy one. No, they didn't. To be honest, we don't have. I think probably the selling point is footfall. So if it's a business, you know, they're inevitably going to get a bit more footfall probably from people that are parking there. One of them was like a local grocery shop. So for example, I imagine, you know, you'd hope that, you know, maybe the parent or carer would nip in before or after if they needed any supplies or things like that, or, you know, it gives a bit of advertising to local business. But they never specifically said as part of the agreement or arrangement for using it as a Park and Stride. That was never discussed. They were just happy to do it. We were very lucky with the 4 locations. But we do have more Park and Strides across the county in general that aren't linked to school streets. And again, we do sell it as more of a greater good, being part of the community and enabling, you know, a safer, more pleasant space, reducing congestion outside schools. So, you know, our team have never had to, you know, have an agreement where the landowner, you know, has to receive anything in return. In terms of Thurmby, so we did close the road off. So the setup for Thurmby was it's essentially what you like we've described as a rat run. So as you go into the centre of Thurmby, where the school is, you come off an A road. So you come off an A47, and it's a small road that runs through the village, but people use it to get to other localities. So it's a run to get through to another local town that has a high school and obviously employment sites. So there was a diversion. There's 2 roads that go into Thurmby, and one of them comes up to a T-junction. So there was a very reasonable, what I would call a reasonable solution in a diversion. However, it was just the amount of traffic coming off that A road that weren't either noticing or taking note of the diversion signs or chancing it was too high. So what I would say is that, you know, effectively you weren't really creating a school street because you're forever letting cars through, you know, and it was quite a long stretch that we had closed off. So we couldn't see end to end, and we had to use walkie-talkies, and there was quite a lot of traffic management setup involved in that situation. And I think for the type of school streets that Leicestershire are running at the moment, it wasn't feasible to continue that site. And I wouldn't ask a volunteer or a member of the public to run a closure of that level. I don't think it was feasible. So it was predominantly the amount of traffic that would come off that A road into the centre of the village.
Thanks, Jessica. Another question for you. Did your schools survey their parent cohorts to find out how many blue badge holders there were among them, and therefore get a steer on what provision was necessary? And actually, I just broaden that to broadly anything interesting from surveys of parents.
Yeah, so we did work with the schools before the closures went into place. So what was really lovely about the schools we worked with, they do know their parents and pupils really well. So we did find out if there was any blue badge requirements, and the schools did work with us to allow access to their car parks or facilities on site. So it was again taking that vehicle off the road outside the school. And for children that may have any additional needs, or say, for example, they were dropped off at the gate and they weren't able to deal with the change, or they had some issues that we needed to manage. Again, the schools were really good, and they were part of the solution for that. So we were allowed a permit to drive through, but the parents were allowed onto site to be able to drop their child off instead of again pulling up within the school street zone. To be honest, the parent survey, it was pretty standard. So we were asking about mode of travel before and after, and we had an open comments box. So we tried to keep it quite short because we wanted people to fill it out, essentially. We've never done very well with really long surveys. We found that we get more engagement when they're short and snappy. And like I say, 93% of those were positive comments. And like I say, I think for me, the main theme that came through was around the safety element, so the perception of safety that came with the school streets to allow that active travel. So yeah, so I hope that answers it. Sorry.
No, brilliant, brilliant. Oh, this was one of my questions. Tony, when you mentioned this stakeholders forum with 50 or so stakeholders, and I can imagine, I'm sure we can all admit what we're like here, a lot of opinions. So how did you moderate and manage so many stakeholders to keep that positive?
Well, you're assuming that we did. You're right. There was a lot of, I mean, obviously everyone who came had stuff to say, and views and opinions, all perfectly valid. One of the kind of things we had to guard against was it was a county-wide forum, and obviously a lot of people have got very, very local issues. So we had to manage people's expectations to come to a county-wide forum to talk about a public footpath or a kissing gate or something in their own particular village. So we tried to make it clear at the beginning that it was a county-wide thing. It was our very first one. We were very keen to kind of show that we were listening to people, although the first one was more necessarily a bit of a one-way street because we had stuff to say, because we wanted to kind of let people know that we got it, but why we did what we did and how we did certain stuff. But in terms of moderating and managing it, really, everyone was pretty well behaved, you know, and we had probably a third of the people online at the same time, so it was a hybrid type thing. We had people in the council chamber at County Hall, so it was pretty quite a nice setting. And I think it was just a case of us setting our stall out early, saying what the forum was, probably more importantly, what it wasn't going to be, what it couldn't be. We ran out of time. Our time management was shocking, and we massively underestimated how long our stuff would take. And we were very keen to take feedback from the first one, not just for ourselves in terms of organisation, but also from the people who came, their views of the speakers that we had and the content of the talks that we had and the usefulness of it and the relevance of it. So it was a bit of a test bed. And we're doing it 6 monthly. Our next one is in March. We've got some ideas from the first one that we're going to put into practice, we think, for the second one. But to answer your question, I think that the key is just making clear at the beginning what it was, and probably more importantly, what it wasn't. And everyone was pretty well behaved. It was okay.
Brilliant, brilliant. Another question, and actually one I hadn't quite thought of before. So, firstly, is this for primary schools or secondary schools? Quite interestingly, is uniform an inhibitor to cycling comfortably, especially in winter? And perhaps all the other coats and jackets and things that kids might need to do this. Has that come up at all as being an inhibitor?
So in terms of school streets, it's primary school. So it's targeted at primary schools. We haven't explored or looked at secondary schools as of yet. In terms of uniform, that's something interesting that hasn't come up at primary school age. I don't know whether that's got something to do with mums and dads obviously probably walking along. If they're for the younger children, if they're cycling on their bikes, they might be carrying their bags and coats and stuff. For those older ones, again, it's not really come up for year 5 and 6, sort of like bikeability age. But that's a really interesting point, and I guess that's something I'm quite interested to take that away. It's not really come up as a barrier in conversations we've had. Secondary schools, that is some work that I'm looking to, in Leicestershire to kind of broaden out. We do have, I think some authorities have opportunities for links in with road safety around transition funding. So transitioning from that year 6 to year 7 where we are, and how that we can encourage those skills that the pupils have learned in bikeability and actually implement them and be allowed to cycle to that secondary school by themselves. So it's probably an area that I need to know a bit more about in terms of those barriers that those pupils might face. But it's a really interesting point because we talk about it with adults, don't we? We talk about people either dressed for work or commuting and stuff, and that being a bit of a barrier. I always remember me and Tony went to a business years ago, and Tony was absolutely trying to convince a lady that lived, I think, within 3 miles of the business to cycle, but she absolutely wouldn't because there's nowhere to straighten her hair when she got there. So I think it's a really interesting point that we perhaps don't think about with children.
Yeah, Jessica.
Could I just bring in one very, very quick thing? If you don't mind, really sorry. It's also about the bikes that we have in this country where they tend not to use pannier racks and mud guards. as we know in Holland they all do, and therefore as they get into secondary school they've got nowhere to put their very heavy school bags because they don't have desks anymore. So that's also, you know, school uniform, the impact of girls and skirts and blazers, but also pannier racks and carrying stuff on bikes. So it is quite important research. Thank you.
Yes, and making it a norm. Yeah. So yeah, absolutely agree with that.
Yeah, and even when I started cycling as an adult, I can relate to that. You don't bring it up as an issue almost because you don't know what the options are, what it could be. So how do we facilitate? Or people might not even quite realize it's their barrier right away.
Yeah.
So something for us to think about for kids as well. I think this is our last question. It sounds quite general, but let's think about it in the context of school streets and then perhaps of those journeys to secondary school for older students. But how can the county council ensure their maintenance teams take clearing paths and routes seriously? And because of this project, what behaviour change might be expected from the council around maintenance?
Yeah, so this did come up as part of the school streets in terms of sort of like when you're suggesting a park and stride route, and you might have what we call a jitty or a shortcut that people might take that full of dog poo or has broken glass, or it might be a hangout for later in the day for younger people. I don't know. So it did come up, and obviously when we were made aware of those situations as project managers, we would work with the appropriate people in order to kind of make sure those routes that we're promoting are clear. But I think kind of generalizing that out to our department in terms of highways, it's a really important part of our LC WIP work, our walking and cycling policy. We are broken down into different departments and teams at the highway, and we are trying to make sure that we have that holistic approach in terms of, like you say, about all those barriers around active travel and walking and cycling, especially when either things aren't maintained or there are unpleasantries along the way. You wouldn't trust a route on any given day what you might find along there. So again, just in the interest of being completely honest, there are routes and times that will be missed or potentially not maintained in line with the funding we have available, the maintenance budget. But as part of the agenda that we have in terms of the commitment to walking and cycling and the strategies, the policies, the LC WIPs that our department are building, we recognise that it's a really key element in order to kind of encourage that and enable that behaviour change for people. So I do agree, but I don't perhaps all have. It's probably a bit higher up than me in terms of like the decision making element, but in terms of pushing that message through, it's definitely there from us as a key element.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jessica and Tony. That appears to be all the questions that we have. But I just thought I might be cheeky and see if Rachel wants to make any last comments, because you've been mentioned so much, Rachel. So if you've got any comments you'd like to make.
Just a big thanks to Tony and Jess for doing that. And yeah, we've got a long road ahead, I think, but it's really great to just have an open-minded team to work with, and they are great, and they have responded really positively. So we've got complexities, the different layers of government and so on, but no, it's really good. I've been really pleased. The problem we've got, I think, which they will recognise, is funding. It's government pushing the local authorities to get on with it and to give them the commitment to funding to do it, and I'd say that's the only thing really holding us back in this area. I think we're like many other areas. We've got congestion, the pollution. I think the political leaders can see we've got to get on with it, but we need the funding because we have no money like everybody else. We've got no money. So that's what I'd say. But yeah, but big thanks to Jess and Tony for doing that.
Thanks, Rachel. And sorry, I know time, but I would say, Rachel, I don't know whether Rachel, it's worth mentioning, that the work that you've done has really inspired other people across the districts, and actually that's meant that we can link up on work in terms of just like a best practice sharing or idea sharing with the district.
Jessica, I'm so sorry, your mic's
sorry.
Off.
Oh, is it not working?
It's giving us a lot of static. Sorry.
Yeah, it's quite tricky here because you've got the county council and then you've got 7 district or borough councils. So, and I have spent quite a bit of time pushing all of them, actually. I'm in one district, but, I'm connected into others. With the change in politics as well, I think that's helping quite a bit as well. you know, with the local elections and the balance of power shifting a bit in some of the authorities, that's really starting to help. So yeah, just look out for where you are getting those changes in politics, because you will start to see that makes quite a bit of difference too.
Yeah. Thank you, Rachel. I'm so sorry, Jessica.
That's it.
Was,
no, it's okay. I don't know if you can hear me now.
Yes, we can. I'll let you round us up and then we'll...
Yeah, so I was just literally going to say, like, I think, you know, again, it's a two-way street with the thanks for Rachel, because actually what it's done, it's opened up our team to be able to work in partnership, not only with Rachel, but we've been able to meet with other districts and other things that are going on, like neighbourhood forums, and kind of share ideas. And I know it's not ideal, not everyone needs to know, but I've been off for a few weeks with News as a Gap, but I'm really excited to pick up that work. And it's really good to be able to feel part of that community that have such a passion for active travel in Leicestershire, and you know, be able to have those conversations. So I just wanted to say I really appreciate that, and I think it's a really good piece of work. So
brilliant. Okay, well, thank you to our lovely speakers and our participants, and also for all the excellent tips that have been popping up in the chat as well. So if anyone is looking for some advice, take a look in the chat also. But I think that will be it for us this evening. So thank you, everyone, and safe and happy cycling, and we will see you next week. And next week, if my laptop will let me pull it up, I'll tell you who our speakers are. Or not, it's a bit slow today, I'm sorry. So thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week. Bye.